In this video, we're going to examine changes in values and ideology over time. Can a person's values or ideology change over time? Do people, for example, get more conservative with age? And is there a worldwide shift towards embracing more authoritarian values? Well, there is some evidence to support these ideas, and we're going to look at some different perspectives to try and understand that evidence. When we look at individuals, there is a sense that they get more conservative over time. There's some evidence to suggest, through survey research and public opinion polling, that people's ideology does shift to become more conservative over time. Now, there's some different explanations for this. One of them might be just due to age and wanting to preserve the status quo. Could also be due to changes in material conditions. For example, compared to when you're young, when you're older, you might have a family, a stable career, and you might own a home. All of those things could give you a different perspective on the role of government and how you want government to function compared to when you were younger. So in that sense, it could be natural to embrace a more conservative outlook as you get older. Could anything else be going on? Well, it's possible that those individual level changes we observe aren't really individual changes, but rather they're generational changes. When we look at different birth cohorts, the people that are born at certain times will experience very different things throughout their life. And those different experiences might shape their ideas about government and what government should do. For example, consider somebody that's born in the interwar period, or somebody that had to fight in World War II. Somebody that was alive for the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism versus somebody that was born after that. The role of technology. People that were born after the invention of the iPhone or YouTube. All of those generational differences can shape how people experience life and how they think about it and the role of government. Now, what is some of the evidence that suggests these changes might be happening? Well, survey research, such as the graph here from Pew Research, does seem to show that when we break it down by age cohort, there does seem to be a more conservative bent with older generations, and younger folks do tend to lean more liberal. So there is some evidence that that's happening. The tough part is, can we parse that out? Do we know whether that is changes at the individual level or changes in generational experience? Really tough to tell. Some other research by Ryan Burge, using data from the Congressional Elections Study, looks at changes in ideology by birth cohort. So he's taken little snapshots from birth years and compared the results over time in this narrow window from 2008 to 2021 to track how each generation overall, sort of in terms of their mean shift, how much they have changed. And we can see some subtle differences in the slopes of those different lines. Some of them have gotten slightly more liberal, some of them have gotten slightly more conservative. So there could be something going on. There could be some generational effects happening. This graphic from the Financial Times of London brings together some different data sets from the United States, but also from the United Kingdom. And they combine them to try and track changes in ideology over time across different generations. And there is some evidence to suggest that at least 3 generations do get more conservative as they get older. The one generation that is shifting that would be the Generation Y, or the millennial generation. They do seem to be getting more liberal as they get older. So it's early to tell. We don't know if there will be a shift as they get even older to becoming more conservative, or there could really be something different about that generation. Could be a different experience, sort of generational effects, but they could also be fundamentally different characteristics. For example, educational attainment is much higher in the millennial generation compared to the other generations. So, we think of them as a different generation. They're also the most educated generation. So that, of course, could give us different worldviews compared to other generations where educational attainment, or at least formal education, was not as high, not at the same proportion. So is one of these approaches more persuasive than the other? The idea that people seem to get more conservative with age? Well, we do see it. We see it in the opinion polling, the survey research, but also election results. When we actually look at the results of elections and exit polling, we can see that it does seem to be older folks voting more conservative and younger folks voting for more left-leaning parties. Now, that is tough to reconcile as well because young folks tend not to vote at the same proportions as older age cohorts. Again, the conservatism and the idea of preserving the status quo, if you're in Generation X and some of the earlier generations, home ownership might be one of those things. You're aspiring to home ownership, and then once you own one, you want to preserve that status quo. But for younger generations, including Generation Y and Z, home ownership might not be that attainable. And so in terms of preserving the status quo, what exactly are you preserving? You might not have that same incentive. So the world might look materially different to you than somebody in an older age cohort. And then, of course, we spoke about the role of education. There are very big differences across generations in levels of educational attainment. That could be contributing something as well. What about democratic values? There is some evidence that worldwide people are shifting away from embracing democratic values and they're embracing authoritarian ideas. Some research by Frank Graves in Canada suggests that there is evidence through survey research that shows that happening in Canada. There is a shift towards what he calls an ordered outlook, a desire for order and a desire for a more authoritarian bent to governing. In the United States, Nathan Calmo and Liliana Mason document through survey results and through experiments that people seem to indicate through surveys that they are more likely to embrace political violence to get what they want. And so that's an example of a value that's more authoritarian than democratic. Pippa Norris, she runs the World Value Survey, and she has found, and her team has found, that there is a growing spread of populist and authoritarian values worldwide. So there is some evidence that, this is changing. There are people that are shifting. Maybe they shift their ideology, but there also seems to be a shift towards more authoritarian values around the world. So just to recap, values and ideology can change over time. There is evidence to suggest that that's happening. Material factors, not sure. Could be demographic factors. Could be a function of age cohort in there as well. This is changing preferences for outcomes, the things you want the government to do, but also the change in means, how you want the government to get those things or how you think violence might be justified in achieving political goals.